Hello, I'm Tony Evans. I'm the football editor of The Times, and welcome to the Game World Cup Hangout. I've got with me Oliver Kay, the football correspondent in Rio de Janeiro, and also in Rio, Gabriele Marcotti, the European football correspondent. Hiya chaps, how are you today?
Very good, thank you, Tony.
Very well, thank you.
Well, Brazil must be a buzz with thoughts of the game tomorrow, the match against Colombia. What's the feeling like there, Gabriel? What's the sort of mood like among the people?
You know, I think if Brazil win this World Cup, it's going to be mostly about relief than anything else, because Chile really gave them a scare. Luis Felipe Scolari was always going to turn certain people off just because of his style of play and the kind of personality he is. And, you know, there's the realization that there is a lot of work to do and a lot of debatable decisions. And had it not been for if Pinheira's shot had been, you know, 1 centimeter lower, they'd be watching the rest of the World Cup on television.
That's the mood amongst the people. Ollie, what's it like at the Brazilian camp? I mean, you were there yesterday, weren't you? Spent half an hour with Neymar. Are they feeling the pressure? I mean, the suggestions leaking out that, you know, it's a powder keg and a could blow.
It is. I mean, a lot of the ex-players, Carlos Alberto and Zico, and people like that, have been talking about the sort of emotional over-intensity of the team. And you look at them, the Neymar crying during the national anthem and Thiago Silva crying before the penalty shootout the other night. And I think everybody can see the positives of that emotion at times. But I think when you look at Brazil at the moment, you look at their performances, they look overwrought in a way. They look like they are too pumped up and too much caught up at the moment sometimes. And I thought they were very lucky against Chile, but they've had really dodgy spells in all of their games, and I think they just need to calm down a lot. And that's why Scolari had his long-serving psychologist visit the team on Tuesday, and I think just to try and placate them a little and get a bit more sort of coolness and composure into the camp, because it just does seem overwrought at the moment.
Gab, if you're Brazil...
Do you buy that, Tony?
Well, Ollie, do you buy that?
Do you buy that as a psychologist coming in, having a chat with 23 players, and all of a sudden, like, they're all settled and, you know, all the fear is gone?
Well, Gab, it's
or is it more something you did for the media?
It's the modern trend, isn't it? You know, to have a psychologist with the team, and you know, and to use that to try and deflect some pressure. You know, England did it with Steve Peters, didn't work out very well. You know, there's inner chimps running around the whole World Cup. I mean, the great managers, coaches have always been amateur psychologists anyway. I mean, should Scolari need this sort of thing, Gab?
No, but it's weird that, you know, it's presented as like modern and cutting edge. I mean, you know, Brazil had a team psychologist way back in the 1958 World Cup. You know, these people have been around. These sports psychologist types have been around for a really long time. And there's no question that, you know, it works and it's important for some players. But I don't know. I just got the sense that bringing the psychologist back in to address the whole team was maybe Scolari wanting to be seen to be doing something, you know, rather than anything that's really gonna make a difference.
There's a bit of a negative feel about that, Gab, but I'll throw this over to you, Ollie. Are Colombia the wrong team for Brazil to get at this stage of the tournament? I mean, out of the last 8, do you think they prefer anyone else?
Well, I don't think they relished playing Chile in the last round. I mean, I was there in Belo Horizonte on Saturday, and I thought Chile were precisely the wrong team for Brazil to be playing, because they're fearless, they're tenacious, they would have absolutely relished the chance to put out, you know, the giants of South America, and I think Colombia will do it the same way. Colombia are probably in some ways an upmarket version of Chile, without wishing to generalise too much. They've also got an outstanding player in James or James, as people in Britain like to call him, and yeah, I think they are precisely the wrong type of team for Brazil to be playing. Having said that, I do fancy Brazil to shade it.
I'm going to throw over to you, Gab, because we need to get the pronunciation of Rodriguez right. There's been lots of talk about it here. You know what? It'd be Jimmy Rods around ours. How do you pronounce it?
He asked people to call him James, so I think that should settle it. Interesting what Ollie said there about Colombia, because I mean, I think they are one of the outstanding teams of the competition. I think together probably maintain the consistently the highest level throughout the 4 games. The one thing I would say, though, is in terms of matchups, I don't think it's so bad for Brazil because it's incredible pace that Colombia have with Cuadrado and Teo and Ibarbo if they play. It's something that they can probably deal with Thiago Silva and David Luiz. They're not wanting for pace at the back. And at the same time, you figure Neymar against Mario Yepes, who's 38, not necessarily an outstanding defense. It's not such a bad matchup. The midfield probably won't be shown up as much. So I think in some ways it could be worse, but quality-wise, it's a tough opponent.
Well, Ollie, talking about defence, I mean, we had a reader, Mr. Johnson, come into us and send us an email saying that, in this World Cup there's been loads of great attacking play, but very little good defensive play, and he believes the quality's down. I mean, is this game symptomatic of that? Because both defences don't look great, and it looks as if it'll be wide open.
Yeah, I think this World Cup is symptomatic of a wider thing that's been happening in football the last sort of 5-6 years ago. I mean, you see the scoring rates in the big leagues, the amount of goals the biggest teams are scoring, and the Premier League fell into line with that this season, with Liverpool and Man City both scoring 100+ goals, and we have seen goals flying in. We have seen the art of defending almost become a lost art. We've seen managers setting up teams to attack, and not to do what Mourinho has done, which is build on sort of solid defensive foundations. I think if you look at the teams in this World Cup, the teams who are in the last 8, not many of them, you would say, have been built on solid defence. I mean, Brazil being a classic example. I mean, 2 fullbacks that bomb forward, David Luiz, who bombs left, right, centre, but bombs forward. He's not. It's not the old-fashioned thing of a compact back 4. You compare it to the Brazil team that won it in 2002. They had a back 5, which the fullbacks obviously bombed forward, but the 3 centre-backs were very fixed points. And you see this World Cup, there aren't many great defenders around in world football generally.
Gab, who will be left to defend Scolari if they go out tomorrow? And what would it mean for the tournament?
I don't know. I mean, it's one of those questions where, this is only the second ever World Cup in Brazil, and the last one was 64 years ago. So the reality is we don't know how the country will react, I think, if Brazil go out. Everybody says it'll be a tragedy, they'll lose interest in the game, national mourning. I don't know to what degree we're kind of just chucking stereotypes around. I like to think that, the fact that the World Cup really is everywhere. They have little tellies in the cabs. I like to think the public has enjoyed this World Cup and will continue to enjoy it even if Brazil go out. I think they've looked at other teams and they've seen that other teams have good players too, and many of them have better players, and possibly a better coach as well, and a better put together team. I almost feel like it's a little bit patronizing, this idea that, oh look, the World Cup ends and then all of a sudden they'll all just stop caring and go back to doing whatever it was they were doing before.
Do you get the same feeling, Ollie? It's or do you think there'll be a sea change in how the tournament's perceived across the country?
Well, I think one thing that's perhaps different about this World Cup is the amount of fans that there are from, all the visiting countries anyway. I mean, in Rio in particular, I mean, it still seems there are 10,000 or 20,000 Chileans who haven't gone home yet since Saturday. Maybe they'll never go home. But Argentinians, Colombians are everywhere. It's not like the atmosphere in the city, well, Rio in particular, is just going to fall flat if Brazil go out. But I think it would be. There would be a sort of massive depression in Brazil. Whether they could then build themselves up again to watch the semi-finals or the final. I think they would, because they're a nation of huge football fans. But personally, I think being here, covering it in Brazil, I think you always want the hosts to stay in as long as they can. I think it always keeps a great fervour around a tournament, and I hope Brazil are in there a good while yet.
Yeah, but let's talk about the games. Let's talk about France, Germany. Everyone's talking about Schumacher, and everyone's looking back there. But it doesn't seem there's a lot of needle between the teams, and it's hard to pick a winner. I mean, the Germans were all over the place the other night, weren't they?
They were, and it's interesting because I think a hallmark from this World Cup is we've seen some very good managers or managers with big reputations get things wrong at big times in big games, and whether it's because this tournament's playing out maybe differently than we thought. We thought it was going to be hot, low tempo, not many goals, and so on. Maybe they prepared one way, games turned out another way. But we saw it with Jogi Löw with that ridiculous high line he kept against Algeria, and the way they nearly went out of the World Cup as a result. I think France match up very, very well against Germany. If Löw goes out and plays possession, he's got to deal with Matuidi and Pogba and Kabay. That's a big physical midfield. You've got the threat of Benzema and Griezmann and Valbuena on the counter. It'll be interesting if Deschamps decides to just give up possession, give the ball, and try to hit on the counter. I think it becomes really, really tough for Germany, especially because Löw has some really, really big calls to make, including, does he actually go with the one genuine center forward he has, or does he keep this Özil up front thing, which didn't do much against the Algerians?
Ollie, I mean, that German high line, I mean, not only was the high line, but essentially it's 4 centre-backs. They're really vulnerable to pace. Have France got the pace to exploit that?
They've definitely got the pace. I mean, not necessarily Benzema, but you look at Valbuena, you look at Griezmann. They are quick players, quick of feet, quick of mind, and the players who would burst forward from midfield as well. Matuidi, Pogba. He's a quick, energetic team that you would think would have the qualities to exploit those kind of weaknesses. But I'm still tempted to side with Germany. I think they've got room for improvement, certainly on the previous game where they were poor. But I do, in spite of everything, I do fancy Germany.
Gab, Pogba, he's been brilliant in Italy this year in Serie A. He scored the other night. There's a lot of talk about him, leaving Manchester United and them wishing they kept him. What do you make of him? Do you think he is a player who can develop into a Vieira-style midfielder?
I don't know that the parallel is Patrick Vieira, because I think he's got other aspects to his game that Vieira never had. He's a much better goal scorer. I think he's quicker than Patrick Vieira. He's bigger than Patrick Vieira, and I had the opportunity to spend some time with him. Sorry?
Is he as intelligent on the pitch?
Well, I'll tell you what. I had the chance to spend some time with him last April. I went down to Turin and see him. He's a really, really bright guy. I mean, he can talk about stuff.
Roy Hodgson reads books but picks bad teams. On the pitch, is he an intelligent player like Vieira was?
I think we have to compare him to the 22-year-old Vieira, right? We can't compare him to Vieira at the end of his career. I don't know. I mean, Patrick Vieira is one of my favorite players, so I may have a bit of bias here. But Pogba, I think, has an aptitude to grow. He's got a confidence in himself. Potentially, he can be as good or better. I mean, I asked him, what do you make of all these comparisons with Patrick Vieira? It's just because you're tall, you're black, you're French, you play in central midfield, and he said, on the one side, I'm honored, but on the other hand, I don't want to be the next Patrick Vieira. I want to be better than Patrick Vieira. I want to achieve more than Patrick Vieira. So I thought that was quite remarkable, and he said it without arrogance, but he said it simply because he has a tremendous amount of self-belief.
Ollie, how much would Louis van Gaal like to see Pogba at Old Trafford when he walks through the door after the World Cup? Do you think it was one of Ferguson's biggest mistakes, getting rid of him?
I'm certain it was. I mean, certainly in terms of the team that he left behind. I mean, the team that Ferguson left behind, really lacked quality and energy and bite in midfield, and Pogba has all of those things, and United are crying out for a player like that at the moment, but so is nearly everybody else, and I think there's an assumption in some quarters that if Pogba comes on the market that he would love to jump back to Old Trafford to, unfinished business. I really don't buy that at all. I'd be surprised if he's got any interest in going back to Old Trafford, because I doubt he's. I mean, A, there's the Champions League thing, but B, he probably associates Manchester and Old Trafford with a period in his career when he wasn't particularly happy, and I would think Spain. I would think maybe PSG. Maybe one of the London clubs he would move to, but I don't see this great United homecoming happening at all.
Let's move on to the other two quarterfinals. Let's talk about Argentina. Misfired a little bit, got lucky in the knockout rounds. Do you see them breezing through to the semis, Gab?
No, I don't actually. I was at the Belgium-USA game, and it was remarkable because I've rarely seen a manager so bullish. Mark Wilmots has been absolutely crucified by the Belgian media for some of the performances on stage. He was out there, he's like, I'm not going to worry about Messi. Messi and Argentina have to worry about us, and whatever else. You could see he was just a man under so much pressure who let it all out. And again, Belgium looked better against the United States, a lot better. They have the potential match winners. Obviously, Messi's an issue because you're playing against defenders like Vertonghen and Van Boyten, who obviously aren't the quickest. Van Boyten's also old. But by the same token, Messi's had very little help from the rest of his team. I don't think Alex Sabella even, not only is Sabella not playing great football as a team, I'm not even sure he's been able to set up Argentina to serve Messi. And then he comes out with these things like comparing this team to the 86 side, which when he says, well, Messi can be crucial for us the way Maradona was in 86. I'm sorry, when you ever hear a manager, go and say something like that, way to go and put pressure on the guy comparing him to the past. And the reality is this team he's got a better supporting cast than Maradona did in 86. And I think it's up to the supporting cast and to the manager to do better.
And Ollie, there's Fellaini for Belgium. Much derided over his year with Man United. Do you think he can find redemption in this quarter-final?
I think Fellaini's been rightly derided on the basis of this past season. I think he was awful at Manchester United.
But they played him all wrong, didn't they? David Moyes played him all wrong for United.
I don't think he's the right fit for United. I don't think he's the right fit for a team playing that way. But I mean, he looks comfortable, more comfortable in a Belgian team. But I'm still a skeptic about Fellaini. He's not my type of player, and I'm sure I'll be gutted to hear that. But I'm sure he could do some kind of destructive role in a game against Argentina, in a game against Lionel Messi, as it's almost being portrayed. But I would look to other people. I would look to Hazard. I would look to De Bruyne. I would look to Lukaku or whoever else, rather than to Fellaini to do a job on Saturday.
I don't know, Gab. I mean, if it was me, I'd push him up on the centre half. I'd play a diagonal eye ball and get the runners coming past him. Do you think that's work against Argentina?
You would think that's one way to go about it in this game. And it's interesting because obviously so many of Belgium's goals in this tournament have been scored by substitutes. And I think to some degree, what he's had, it's also a sign because Wilmots got things wrong early on, certainly in the 3 group games. If he gets it wrong again initially against Argentina, they could find themselves a couple games down. But by the same token, they have the physical players that can really cause some problems, I think, for this Argentina defense as well.
Ollie, we'll talk about the other quarterfinal, and then we've got some feedback from watchers on Twitter and ask you some questions about that. But I'll ask you about Costa Rica. Can they pull off a miracle? Can they go to the semi-finals?
It would be amazing, wouldn't it? I mean, we can look at South Korea doing it in 2002, and that was to some extent the biggest shock that there's been in modern World Cup history in terms of a team making it that far.
They have an extra advantage.
Well, exactly, and they got the benefit of some dodgy decisions, whereas Costa Rica have just done it their own way. They were drawn in what looked like the hardest group, and I say that not showing too much respect to England and Italy, but it did look like an extremely hard group in which they would finish bottom. They then got, by virtue of winning the group, they got Greece, and I thought they were deserving winners there. I still think it is an awful lot to ask for them to beat Holland, and Holland have shown themselves to be a team who, even if they start badly in a game, even if they, Van Gaal needs to switch things around in the last 15 minutes, they're a team who can find a way. So I would guess this is where gravity catches up with Costa Rica, but I suppose you never know. I mean, anything must feel possible to them now.
Gab, there's a mental toughness about Holland, which when you use that phrase, mental toughness in Holland at World Cups, it's like a surprise. But they were able to battle it out against Mexico in a game that Mexico looked to have won. Do you see them being viable challenges to win the tournament?
I mean, again, we've had so many shocks that anything can happen, but this is a bad group of individuals. And I say the group, I say bad meaningfully. It's shocking. Some
like defenders hanging with the kids style, or Michael Jackson.
No. I mean, bad is in like untalented, unathletic.
Just wanted to clarify that.
Van Gaal, how he's managed to put these guys together. The old stereotype we have, oh, look, the Dutch school of football, let's all be Dutch and tips and whatever, and they'll keep producing these defenders who are comfortable on the ball. And no, for whatever reason, it hasn't worked. The Vrij, this 30-year-old who plays in Germany, who they brought in on the right-hand side, terrible. And Van Gaal's found a way to make this work. They've been humble. They've worked together. They've relied on superstars like Robin. Robin's carried them in certain games, Van Persie and others, and then Van Persie doesn't show up, and then Van Gaal makes the big choice to send on Huntelaar, and Robin wins the battle. I mean, all this stuff. It's been really, really quite remarkable. I mean, in terms of chemistry, this is the complete opposite, I think, of managing a club side, and it's been remarkable from Van Gaal, and a fantastic job. I think, obviously, they are favored against Costa Rica. I think they'll really miss Nigel de Jong in midfield, just in terms of leadership. I'm assuming Daley Blind will play there, and it's just not the same thing. Although at least that way you don't have Daley Blind in the back line trying to catch up with people who are far quicker than he is. I think a big key is going to be Van Persie's state of mind. If he's not slighted, if he feels comfortable, if he's happy and he's productive and doesn't play the way he did against Mexico, then I think Holland, they like their chances to keep going, maybe all the way to the final. If Van Persie's still a problem, and Robin, isn't Superman, then maybe it could be an upset.
I'm going to come back to the quarterfinals and ask you for a last four before we finish. But I'm going to ask a couple of questions I've come through from Twitter. Grassroots Manager on Twitter has said, why does every journalist refer to penalties as a lottery? It's football skill. It's not a coin toss. Actually, I'm one of the few people probably involved in this who've actually seen a game decided by a coin toss.
This really annoys me. It's not football skill, okay? This is just one of those stupid things. Can you prepare for this? Yes, you can go and you can prepare for it to some degree, use psychology and whatever else. Is there football skill involved in kicking a stationary ball from 12 yards out? Yes, there is. But the reality is it's not part of a football game except if you're the designated penalty taker. So in that sense, it's a lottery. You're training people to play a certain way, to play a certain game, to perform a certain task for 90 minutes, and then they go do something completely different.
It's not a lottery. I mean, you look at golfers practicing the putts repeatedly. I mean, you can practice these things. It's not a lottery.
You putt on every green. You don't take penalties every game. It's different.
It's not that different. You can actually get yourself in a situation where you can do things better. I mean, I think we all know footballers who don't practice the game enough, and sort of there are some who do and there's some who don't. But, I mean, is that your view, Ollie?
I agree with the Grassroots Manager. I think it is a skill, but it's also a question of nerve. And I think you can often guess which team will be found to be showing the best technique and the best composure under pressure, and it's often not England. It often hasn't been Holland at big tournaments, but often maybe these things become sort of self-fulfilling, and teams with bad penalty records just get worse and worse as their record gets worse. But I think it is a skill. It's not the pure skill of of the 90 minutes or the 120 minutes, but I've heard alternatives proposed at various times, and I think penalties not ideal, but it's I think it is a skill, and it is a reasonably fair way of sorting it out, because it is not a lottery.
Well, from my point of view, it's all about the mental strength there, and but you can't help yourself by practicing things. That's my point of view. Forrest Isaac Jones, an American who watches the Premier League on television, is asking, what does football in the States have to do to make the next step in the World Cup? Gab, this is obviously up your street.
Well, if you're talking about the U.S. men's national team, I think they just simply need to have better players. I think, when we saw it against Belgium, I think Klinsmann didn't help himself with some of his choices, because if you decide to play so deep, and play on the counter, then you need at least one guy in your forward line who's fast and can provide a threat behind. And rather than making poor Clint Dempsey play up front, where he had to basically create his own chances and then try to finish them. In terms of the game in the U.S., I mean, some of these numbers, 25 million, 26 million, those are more viewers than England got in the U.K. And obviously the U.S. is a larger country, but the way I look at it is that, there's a UK-sized country within the United States, more or less. And that's pretty remarkable. I mean, I think across the board, viewing figures are up 44% compared to 2010. And that's without taking into account the number of people who get together, 25,000 fans at Soldier Field, Chicago, to watch the game the other day. You've got a league that's throwing 18,000, 19,000 a season. Small steps, but I think they're getting there. Now the trick is produce better players rather than importing Germans, because that generation is going to be tapped out real soon.
Ollie, what's your view on developing a viable World Cup challenge in the States? And will the United States win the World Cup before England do?
Well, you look at the last two World Cups; they've been a lot better than England. Or three of the last four World Cups, they've been better than England. So why not? They seem more likely to improve at the moment than England do. So I mean, I would agree with what Gab says. It's not just the quantity of players; it's the quality and perhaps the type of players that that they need to develop. But in terms of organisation, in terms of spirit and all that kind of thing, all the things that you thought that an America team might lack, because football isn't as much a part of the national psyche as it is in European countries, South American countries. I think they were great in those regards, but I think rather than get too excited, you have to acknowledge the fact that they probably had only one really good performance, which was the one against Portugal in the World Cup. They were hanging on in a few of those games, and I think spirit and organisation got them a long way. But I do think technically and in terms of sophistication, they need to get better.
Gab, the inevitable Luis Suarez question. Laura Kajtari on Twitter asked, has he damaged the credibility of the tournament? I think I know the answer to this.
No, not at all. He's damaged his own credibility, I think. And he's proven once again, I don't know what it is with Suarez about the fact that I think he probably has some of the worst lawyers. I don't know if he that back when he had the Evra case, I believe I'm right in saying that Liverpool's usual lawyers are also United's lawyers, so they had to recuse themselves. They got some other people in. He handled that very, very badly, in my opinion. And this time around, I believe it's his brother-in-law, Balby, who decided, oh yeah, just pretend it didn't happen, deny that it ever happened, and that's a great defense. They really buy that. Now, he hurt himself, but in terms of the tournament, no. I think he was dealt with. He was given a very, very tough fine, one that I believe the punishment will be reduced on appeal. But I think, if anything, the way he was dealt with enhanced the credibility of the tournament.
Ollie, your view on it? Very short, 1 minute.
I totally agree with Gabby. He's not damaged the World Cup's credibility, he's damaged his own credibility. I think his excuse, his denial and the denial of others on his behalf was just ridiculous. And has been exposed by his subsequent apology, which was also extremely transparent and predictable once it was rumoured that Barcelona wanted him to apologise. And this is a guy who's now seemingly taking orders from prospective employers rather than his own employers, or indeed just following what he should be doing.
And to wrap it all up, Gab, your last thought.
All right, my last four. I'm going to go with Brazil, France, Holland, and drumroll, Belgium.
And Ollie, yours?
I will be more predictable. I will go Brazil, Germany, Holland, Argentina, but I would be slightly open to the idea of France beating Germany.
I'd love to see Belgium, Costa Rica in there, but can't see it. I think the favourites will go through. Thanks for joining us. This has been Gabriele Marcotti and Oliver Kay in Rio, Tony Evans in London, and this has been the Game Google Hangout.